Co-host बना दें, co-host. Namaskar, sir.
Sir, good morning.
All the participants.
IT team, please check whether
Making, sir, making.
Vice Chancellor's mic is unmuted or not. Immediately check it.
Now it is muted. Thank you.
Namaskar, sir.
Namaste.
Sir, namaskar.
Namaste. Namaste. Namaste.
Sir, with your kind permission, can we start the session?
हाँ जी बिल्कुल करें शुरू.
Thank you, sir. Chanchal madam, start the session.
Thank you, sir. I welcome today's eminent speaker, Shri Raj Nehru ji, who is the youngest and founding Vice Chancellor in the country. He is heading Shri Vishwakarma Skill University, the first state government skill university in India and sixth in the world as Vice Chancellor since its inception in 2017. He has also been given additional responsibility as a Vice Chancellor of JC Bose Science and Technology YMCA Faridabad in recent past. He has been also Mission Director for Haryana Skill Development Mission at initial stage. He has been Director HSEDC. He is a member of the Committee on the Formation of Implementation Plan on National Education Policy. He is also a member of Steering Committee PMKVY MSD Government of India. He is on board of various organizations and committees of UGC MSD state universities. A veteran in human capital management, he has spent more than 2 decades in various roles in different organizations, including a wide range of sectors such as pharmaceuticals, IT and ITES, manufacturing, automobile are some of them. He has been associated with various multinational organizations as director and in various lead roles. He has a vast global experience handling various projects of different nature across the world, especially in countries like Philippines, China, Europe, Australia, United States. Under his leadership, Sri Vishwakarma Skill University has pioneered a unique dual education industry integrated model under Earn While Learn scheme, which is getting highly popular across the nation and appreciated by state government and government of India. He has written several articles, blogs, and chapters in books. His chapter in Human Resource Management of Organizational Sustainability are highly popular amongst the reader. He is actively involved in social activities and founded Utsav Foundation, a non-profit organization. This foundation educates and skills underprivileged children from the slums. He has received special commendation from Government of India and state government for his extraordinary contribution during the natural calamities happened in Uttarakhand, Visakhapatnam, and Jammu Kashmir. Sir is a recipient of various awards. The few names are Innovative Leaders Awards, Brick of Change Award, Neelkant Samman 2019, and recently honored with the Most Inspiring Vice Chancellor Award. I request Honorable Vice Chancellor Sir to share his valuable experience on prospects of leadership and governance in national education policy. Sir.
Thank you and धन्यवाद Chanchal Bhardwaj ji, and I think I would like to congratulate Professor Rishipal ji for initiating this wonderful 1-week program under the Atal Academy of AICT's objective for training and learning of faculties under the faculty development program with Sri Vishwakarma Skill University. I think you have given me a very tough topic today that talks about the governance part, which is very, very vast and very, very critical component of the overall national education policy. I'll try my best to share what best I understand that. And as far as the leadership part is concerned, that's my favorite subject, and I will try to add some personal thoughts around that part. But before we talk about this topic, we need to understand that the background of why and how India in recent past has thought of bringing these tectonical shifts. And one of the tectonical shift is the kind of education policy that we have witnessed. It's highly aspirational in the context of making people circle back to the roots that we had somehow got disconnected with. And when I say that, I say it with great confidence based on the various researches that we see around, and some of the researches are by very famous British historians, economic historians, I must say, Dr. Angus Maddison, who in his book, The Contours of World Economy, when he did that entire research of the entire world to find the economic position of various countries and the geos, he brought very interesting data points that showed that the total global economy, right from his research, which is first century AD until 17th, 18th century, he has brought a very strong data that indicates India's overall contribution in the global GDP for almost 1700 years. And in that research finding, Angus Maddison talks about India's GDP contribution to the world GDP was around 32%. And this oscillated between 27, 28%, even after when the Mughal rule came in and the Turks came in, and then the colonials then started annihilating it. This data point is further strengthened by when you look at the other researches conducted by the Srini Kalyanaraman Institute from South, who went beyond first century AD, and they found that India's GDP contribution to the world GDP was more than 50%, because India was one of the biggest metal economies of those times, where between Haifa to Indonesia to Israel, through the these ship routes they used to trade the metal across the world, whether it was the steel or whether it was the zinc or whether it was any other metal that India used to produce. So it's very important for us to understand what was happening in India during all these years that made India vibrant and that made world to come to India and buy from India. Today, if you look our GDP to the world GDP, it is not more than 5 or 6% of. The Prime Minister has been talking about that we have to make it a 5 trillion economy in next couple of years, and then we have to be a 10 trillion economy, but it is still seen as 5 to 7% of the total GDP of the world, compared to what we were 25, 30%, 32% as per the Angus Maddison's research. Now, something was happening in India for many, many millennials. And one important thing that I found that India was had a big strength was its educational system. If you look at the India as an educational hub, you will find people from all over the world coming to India, whether from Rome to Europe to Arabia to Persia. I think there is no scholar who has not visited India. whether it is Al-Baruni or Hyun Sang, Fahian, Xinjiang. You find one after another great scholars coming to India, influenced by the stories they heard from the traders who used to come to India for trading, and then they used to go back to their respective countries, and then they used to talk about that the merits and strengths and amazing experiences they had in India that compelled many scholars to come to India. And they have written down in their memoirs, if you read any of these scholars, they have written down in their memoirs that what fascinating things they found. And one of the fascinating thing was the education system that we had in India. And we had one after another institutions, whether it was Takshila, Nalanda, Somapura, Udantapuri, Vallabi, Sharda, Kantanur Shala. One after another, we had great institutions of excellence. And these great institutions of excellence is not only what the British historians, in fact, I have read Dr. Shashi Tharoor writing in his book, Inglorious Empire, where he has talked about how Britishers systematically annihilated and destroyed India, and how these colonial masters industrialized their country while effectively deindustrializing India. And most of the scholars have also talked about how the Western industrialization was completely financed by the loot they had from the India, and how these Western models systematically tried to destroy the education system that was the backbone of India's livelihood and progress. And none of us is actually unaware about what Macaulay did, how he brought English education to India with the sole objective of hammering in the inferiority complex amongst the Indians. He actually wanted to say that, in fact, he never hesitated in selling the lies or spreading out his design. He used to say that he wants to create a class of Indians or a class of persons which are Indian in blood and color, but English in taste and opinions, in morals and in intellect. And that's what he tried to do. And the idea was to make the Western aspirational. And I think he was successful in what he wanted to do. Today, we can see that getting reflected in all our endeavors, whether when we have a urge to have English as a medium of communication, or when we emulate what's happening in the West as a best practice compared to what is in India, not a best practice. So reasons are multiple, but I think these incidents have really brought India to this state of affair where we are today, where today our children do not feel proud of what India contributed in various segments, whether it was science or whether it was astronomy, whether it was medicine, or whether it was education, whether it was philosophy, or you take any of the areas. I think India has shown its mettle in all areas. And now when we look at the new education policy, the purpose and intention of this education policy also appears to reinvigorate that sense of self-esteem that we have been disconnected with, to inspire that thinking that is rooted in our heritage and culture, to bring that idea of Bharat that we have been known for many millennials. And that can only happen when we have a progressive and a creative way of looking at our education system. So a lot of changes have been brought in the education, and I'm not going to talk about that. Most of you would have gone through during these few days, or you may be aware of what kind of remodeling has been done with the school education, what kind of remodeling has been done with the higher education, how the higher education has been made a little flexible, where the research institutions um, uh, and the research is made as one of the important ingredient, and how all those aspects have been brought into the new education policy. But today I'm going to talk about the leadership and the governance in higher education with respect to the new education policy that has been. So I will today focus on the what we call the implications of the new education policy on the aspects of leadership, governance, innovation. So I will restrict myself to this part. But before that, let's understand this governance. As far as the new education policy is concerned, there are two aspects to the governance of the institutions. One is the external regulation and another is the internal governance. And the new education policy has created a scope for addressing both the aspects of governance. So I'll try to highlight the provisions relating to the external regulation first, and then I will come to the self-governance and then look at the implications and nuances that this new education policy's governance model is going to have. So with reference to the external regulation, the significant change of the new education policy is to create a single regulator for higher education institutions. So let's look at the pre-national education policy scenario. The earlier scenario we are all familiar with. We have several regulators in higher education. We have a University Grants Commission, then which is governing the universities. Then you have an All India Council for Technical Education, for engineering education. And then we have NCTE, which is regulating the teachers' education. Now, what new education policy has tried to do is that it has tried to make an attempt to improve governance by bringing in a single regulator. And this new regulator is now called as Higher Education Commission of India, HECI, what they call it. And now this HECI is to regulate all the institutions except medical and the law colleges. So they will be outside the ambit of the HECI. For that, they will be separately regulated. Now, this HECI is envisaged as a single overarching umbrella body for the entire realm of higher education. It will have this HECI is further classified into 4 verticals, and they are all 4 independent verticals. Now, the first vertical is what they call National Higher Education Regulatory Council. That is for the regulation purposes. The second one is the General Education Council. The third one is the Higher Education Grants Council, HEGC. And this Higher Education Grants Council is for funding. And the fourth one is the National Accreditation Council, which is meant for accreditation. So let me help you understand by giving a little brief about these 4 verticals. The first vertical of HECI will be the National Higher Education Regulatory Council. As I said, it will function as a what we call as a common or a single point regulator for higher education sector, including the teacher education for all these higher education. The primary mechanism to enable the regulatory side process and the accreditation side would be now dealt by the National Accreditation Council, which is also considered to be as a meta-accrediting body in the country even today when we look at it. But now under the national accreditation, all the institutions will fall. So that's the beauty of now this accreditation process. The third third one is your Higher Education Grants Council, which will carry out the funding and the financing of the higher education based on the criterias which would be set by this. Now, the process is on. All these councils will, or of wings will have to create their own policies, own rules, regulations, including they will have to develop their own policies. But in the Higher Education Grants Council, besides funding and financing of higher education, it will try to build the what they call is IDP, Institutional Development Plan, which every institution will have to make, and they would be monitored for their progress and implementation on the IDPs which these higher education institutions will have made. They are also interested with the what they call is this disbursement of scholarships and development funds for launching new focus areas by the higher education institutions. And any effort that the institutions will take in what they call in expanding the quality program offerings at the higher educational institution level across all the disciplines and fields. So that's where the HEGC will try to focus on. And the fourth vertical, which is this HECI will has brought it, is the General Education Council. The focus of the General Education Council is to frame the learning outcomes for higher education programs, and normally what we call the graduate attribute. So this General Education Council's job is to work and frame these learning outcomes for, or in the form of graduate attributes for these institutions. Now, we have to understand the implications and nuances of this regulatory architecture that this new education policy has proposed. See, the stated objective in setting up a single regulator is to avoid inter-organizational conflicts that we have seen in last many decades, that because of multiple regulators, there was always this issue of multiplicity of organizations, and that led to many kind of conflicts and many kind of overarching decisions that slowed the progress of many institutions. The new education policy has observed that the multiplicity of regulatory bodies, which created conflict of interest among these bodies itself, and that impacted the accountability towards the progress in education. So that was one of the basic reasons for the new education policy makers to think at it. And remember, when they were making this these changes for governance, they had contacted, I think, more than 2 lakh people across the country. That included educationists, that included teachers, that included industry, that included bureaucracy. And based on the inputs that they had gathered, one important aspect that emerged and that came from everyone is, most of you would have also experienced in your respective roles, that how these regulatory bodies with the conflict in their roles and responsibilities became impediment for discharging of various progressive initiatives by the institution. So in the new regime, the distinct function of regulation, accreditation, funding, and academic standard setting will now be performed by these distinct, independent, and empowered bodies. But all these bodies now would be under one common umbrella. So this is considered essential to create checks and balances in the system and minimize the conflicts of interest and eliminate. Sometimes what happened is there's a concentration of power at one place, and because the concentration of power at one place happens, that becomes detrimental to the progress of the education. So I think smoothening and streamlining of the processes will remove the barriers that higher education institutions have been experiencing, and therefore this architecture eliminates the duplication and dysfunction of regulatory efforts by the multiple regulatory agencies that existed in the current time. Though it's going to take a little bit more time, because a lot of changes at the ministry level have been initiated, and I think there are going to be some announcements that we are going to hear very soon. So this is a big signal of change towards the approach that this new education policy has adopted in the area of regulation of the education in India. And one of the what we call slogans is simplification and rationalization. So with the agenda of this simplification and rationalization, I think this is a big beginning. In fact, if you have read the national education policy, there is a term they have used, and that term is called light but tight framework. So this light but tight regulatory framework is the mool mantra, what we call, of this governance process that we are right now talking about. The overall national education policy is speaking about transforming and overhauling the regulation that has been an impediment for various purposes that we could not achieve in last 65-70 years. So it is expected that this change in governance is going to, I won't say completely eradicate, but I feel to a great extent it is going to reduce and bring in some equity and parity and flexibility in the process. Given that with this overarching structure, its purpose is now to ensure that we have a kind of integrity, transparency, and resource efficiency of the educational system. And every organ that has been carved under the Higher Education Commission of India, now every organ will work in tandem with separation of duties, but they will have a wider focus now for the roles and responsibilities that they are going to demonstrate. And this in return will improve the efficiency of the educational system. There would be proper audits and public disclosures, while there would be focus on encouraging innovation and out-of-box ideas through the autonomous modeling and the good governance that this new education policy has been talking about. So, that autonomous and good governance and empowerment is in our internal part. So I have been talking about the external regulatory mechanism for the governance of the educational institutions. But with reference to the second aspect, that is the internal governance, that the structure of an institution that the new education policy brings in is a new approach. There's a new approach towards the internal structuring. Towards this aspect, the new education policy is focusing on strengthening the institutional leadership and also the self-governance of institutions. Now, how this self-governance of institutions happen in India? The new education policy is talking about liberating more than 50,000 standalone educational institutions and bring them under the model of self-governance. Now, how will that happen? So that is where the new education policy is talking about, that a board of governance will be established for the institutions that have received the appropriate what they call graded accreditation. So the new model of graded accreditation has now been introduced, and I think it will benefit thousands of such institutions. But there is a method that this new education policy is talking about. They are talking about how this new BOG, what they call Board of Governors, will be constituted, who will be part of the Board of Governors, what is the qualification, competence, their contribution towards the overall institutional strengthening. So the institutional empowerment extends to the higher education institutions in the form of this bringing in this regulatory change. Government has decided that they will phase out the affiliation of colleges in next 15 years. So as an institution today which are going for affiliation, government has thought of getting out of that affiliation model, but in a phased manner in next 15 years, and a stage-wise mechanism has been proposed that will be established for granted a graded autonomy to the colleges. So over a period of time, every college is expected to develop into either an autonomous degree granting college or a constituent college of a university. Now, how will that impact the institution? It will. This autonomy will help an institution to move into the ambit of self-governance, and through a system of this graded accreditation and graded autonomy, and in a phased manner over 15 years, India aims to become independent, self-governing institution hub, which enables these institutions to pursue innovation and excellence at their own level. But it all will be driven by the Board of Governors. The Board of Governors will be empowered to govern the institution, and these Board of Governors will be free from any external interference, and these Board of Governors will be empowered to make appointments, including the appointments for the head of the institutions, and take all the decisions regarding the governance of the institution. Like you have in universities today, you have executive council that takes all the major decisions. The government through this new education policy has proposed that the Board of Governors, wherever they get constituted, these Board of Governors will now drive all the recruitment process, all the selection process, and help the institution to get the right kind of talent and help these institutions to grow. It's very aspirational, but this is how India is wanting to move into the league of empowered educational hub in the world. So there shall be more separate provisions that will be created, and I think more legislations would come, and they will be provided, where they will have to create a constitution, appointment, modalities, and functioning, and rules and regulations, all that roles and responsibilities for the board and governors. I think once this framework will come in place, so I think all these aspects will be slowly coming out, and how the members of this board will also be identified, how they will be appointed, how their terms will be governed. All this will be envisaged in the coming days. I think in next couple of weeks and months, we will be seeing lots of changes that will come in. So with this, I think this is going to really create and empower an institution through an autonomy to become more vibrant, contribute and compete with other institutions, and leave them with the liberty to think and act on some of the important goals and objectives that they would have thought of, which eventually sometimes they are unable to do. Because I remember when I have been talking to many colleges who are affiliated to many universities in the state, sometimes they complain of not being able to innovate, or not being able to do some creative stuff, not being able to make some changes in what they want to do or what they are doing, because the universities with which they are affiliated either do not have time to accept their changes or do not allow them to do their changes, and that breeds in a lot of frustration, and very good institutions, they do not grow. So I think with all that has come in, I think this governance, internal and external governance, will definitely bring a sense of excellence, sense of improvement that may be possible. Another implication of this overall architecture that the new education policy that the government has created is uniformity of regulation. And what this will create is, it will create a level playing field for public and private higher education institutions. So all these bodies will now will not make much distinction between the government and the private funded institutions, and this will actually put a sense of competition, because there is possibility many institutions may get phased out with time, because if they are not able to meet the purpose and the outcomes, they may wither away with time. So I personally feel this will ensure that the state-backed university system will have to compete on equal terms with the private and foreign universities. So I think it's going to be a very interesting times ahead, that how this entire modeling will shape up, how this entire governance will shape up. But I think if this governance is brought in and a good quality leadership is nurtured in the institutions, I will talk about the leadership in my second part. But if this governance model is rightfully carved now, reiterating the objectives of excellence, innovation, and merit, I think it will enable the creation of culture of excellence and innovation in higher education institutions. And at no point of time it can stop India from being part of that world-class institution hub that we have been eyeing for last couple of decades. Unfortunately, we have not been able to make much stride in that, but I think the time has come when India can be part of that. So structurally, there are several provisions which enable this focus on excellence and merit. But what I see is that in all the institutions which will require to acquire graded accreditation as a will have a precondition that unless they acquire the graded accreditation, they cannot be allowed to create board of governors within their institution. So this creation of board of governors, which the government and these mechanisms now, the external regulatory mechanism will allow, is only when such institutions who have qualified the levels of their graded accreditation, and only then they will have the possibility of creating board of governors in their institution. So it's only upon receiving the appropriate graded accreditations that the institutions would be ready for such a move, that the board of governors can be established in these institutions. And these board of governors, as I said earlier, also will be coming from the most qualified, competent, and dedicated individuals, for which also the entire criteria is being set right now. I think it will be soon released by the government. So I think this process is going to be of a significant value, and it will help institutions to achieve their overall vision, and also contribute to their strong social commitments in the coming days. So this is one part, and I think when the government will make more rules and regulations, and how that entire process will be established, I'm sure that there are a lot of thoughts going on how the BOG, this board of governors, stability, their quality, their tenure, how that all is designed to make sure that this BOG helps an institution to develop a suitable culture in the institution. Now, that is one part. The second part of this leadership, internal leadership I was talking about, is the leadership of the internal people. So we talked about the structure that we have outside that the government has created under the new education policy. We talked about how the internal structures of governance would require government to make sure that the institutional governance is treaded towards the path of achieving that vision and mission that the new education policy has set for itself. There is another angle that I see from the leadership perspective. I think including the institutional leaders, I feel including the institutional leader, every individual who is contributing in any form, whether there is a skill instructor, to an assistant professor, to a professor, to a dean, to a chairperson, or to a vice chancellor, or to anyone in the institution. I think what is important that I feel, there needs to be a sense that needs to be developed is for a sense of vision and mission that every individual should have. And when I say vision and mission, an institution's vision and mission, what institution wants to achieve, and that too in the short run and in the long run. I think a life is purposeless, an institution is purposeless if there is no vision. And when I say vision, it's not an idea, it's not a goal. It's something which is abstract in the mind of a leader, that this is an ideal state of my work that I want to achieve. Now, it culminates from the institution's mission. And sometimes there are certain institutions where there is no stated vision, but individual leaders, teachers, faculties, they have a stated vision for their work, what they are doing. So in their limited sphere, either you integrate your vision and mission with the larger vision and mission of the institution, or you create a vision and mission for your work. You may be a teacher for one program, and you may have a vision for that one program. Where do you want to shift that program? So as a leader, when I say leader, I mean anyone who is in the role where a person has an ability to influence and get certain things done that impact the lives of many. In those roles, I think it's important to have a vision for what you are doing. And that vision should be short and long term. It is important because vision will help you to set goals for excellence. And, and if you really want to have goals for excellence, you need to think and connect many dots, forward connection of dots, backward connection of dots, and create a ideal utopian thought, utopian state, and this is what I want to achieve, and then draw a imaginary roadmap. And on that imaginary roadmap, till the distance you can see, create tangible results that you would want to achieve. And as you step ahead and you achieve those tangible results, you will start the future getting unlocked in front of you. And you know what happens when you have a vision? Sometimes the end state, that is the utopian state, you don't have a tangible result getting defined. But there is a distance where you can see a tangible result, which is part of that larger vision, which is a small shot. Achieve that, define that, have a tangible result defined around it. And as soon as you reach to that tangible result, I bet you from there, when you will see where you had carved a vision, a long-term vision, you will suddenly start feeling that there's tangibility coming to it. And remember one thing, when you have a vision defined for your work, whatever you are doing, you will see that it has a connection with your purpose, that what do you want to achieve in your life as an individual, as a professional. And if you are clear in what you want to achieve in your life, it will inspire you to think bigger, better, different, creative, innovative. The second thing, I find the role of a leader in organization at whatever level he is, whether he is a vice chancellor or she is a vice chancellor, or he is a professor or teacher, or she is a instructor, or whatever role they are playing. I think one important role in institutions I have realized is our biggest role is connecting people and their personal energies with the larger purpose. See, the entire game in any organization is the game of energies. If you see, you have some energy and that energy drives you to achieve that purpose. Same goes with everyone in your team, whether it's the person reporting to you, or it's the person working with you, or it's the person working in some other department. Everyone has a personal energy inside them, and that energy sometimes is bubbling but without a purpose. A leader's role is to connect people's personal energy with a larger purpose, with a bigger purpose. And if you are able to do that, you are doing justice to what role you are playing in the organization. And whether you achieve purpose through aligning personal energy, or you get personal energy aligned with the purpose, it is immaterial. Both have a complementing role to play with each other. Now, how do you do this? How do you help as an individual leader in the organization to connect people's personal energy with the purpose? It can happen when you are able to inspire people. How will you inspire people? You can inspire people when there are very qualitative social exchanges happening in the organization, when you don't have personal agendas, when you don't have personal motives behind you driving your external behaviors. See, the problem today in the social context is we try to appear very sweet and good outside, but there are hidden agendas inside, and that sometimes we feel people are not seeing, but people in the world outside who are watching you without your knowledge, they can see that behind your behaviors there is some agenda which they may not be able to figure out, but they can sense it. And sometimes people think no one is able to see me. But this dichotomy, this incongruity between the internal motive and the external behavior is the cause of leadership failure. If you really want to be a leader who inspires and creates that sense of purpose and reinvigorates the energy with that purpose. The most important thing is, how do you align your inner motive with external behavior? There should be no incongruity. वो जैसे हम बोलते हैं ना, inside out approach, walk the talk approach. बहुत लोगों को गलतफहमी होती है कि that they are absolutely honest, they are absolutely truthful, and because this is what I did, this is what I have been saying, this is what I have been doing, but they have never seen inside themselves. They have never done an exercise on self-awareness, that what is happening inside me, why I am behaving like this. And when you start looking inside, you will find that there was a hidden agenda that prompted you to behave like this. And as you build your self-awareness higher and higher and higher, the alignment with the external behaviors start also improving, start becoming more synchronous. And as the behaviors become synchronous, you will realize that the aura around you is becoming more positive. People around you automatically start becoming influenced by what you are doing. But it requires a lot of effort. So engaging people energy can only happen when the first change you make is in yourself. Knowing yourself, understanding your feelings, understanding your emotions, understanding your inner motives, understanding your inner values, and then demonstrating the behaviors aligned with those values that are true to yourself. So that's the first step for a good leader. The second step for a good leader is not only knowing themselves and their inner emotions and inner feelings and then behaving, but also understanding the other people, which is in management called empathy. So if you demonstrate empathy, means if you step in their other person's shoes and try to feel how the other person would be feeling, it will give you an opportunity to engage with their energy and help them to discover their energies and align their energies with the purpose and the objectives that you have set in front of them. This will make the relationships more meaningful and more cooperative. If a leader is able to do this, I think it can really transform an institution, a department, a small group of people. Remember one thing: leadership is about value-driven activity. Value what you believe in, not what you pretend to believe in. So what you believe in, even if you believe in hatred, demonstrate hatred. At least you are consistent in what you are believing in. But unless you know who you are, what your values are, it is very difficult for someone to be consistent in their behavior. So leadership role is very critical in every function. It requires authenticity by an individual to demonstrate, and only authentic leaders can influence people. And when I say authentic leaders, doesn't mean I'm talking about the vice chancellors or deans or chairperson. I'm talking about everyone, because remember, the times are so changing that today there is no linear world. Today, there's a horizontal world. If you think you are specialist in some area and you will create miracles, you are mistaken. The world has become, networked. And if you miss one network, you will miss the bus. So, as an individual, you have to come out of that linearity syndrome and work in a collaborative environment. And that's only possible when you are authentic in your behaviors. People will look up to you. So I have coined it with an acronym, which is called VEEDA, V-E-E-D-A, V-E-E-D-A. So for a leader, it is V for vision, E for energy, E for engagement, D for direction, and A for alignment. So there needs to be a shared vision by an individual. And the shared vision means, if you are, say, for example, in electrical engineering, how do you have mechanical, computer, IT, GIS, how all of you are coming together and having a shared vision for what you are doing. As you have that shared vision, how do you bring your energies together? How do you engage? And how do you create a direction and alignment for yourself? That is a role a leader has to keep in mind. And when there are many people thinking on the same lines, you will have a shared vision organization coming in front of you, and that will help you to achieve the success that you are thinking about. So at the end, I would only categorize two very important things. A leader in any institution, including the academic institutions, has to make sure that two components of building this authentic leadership, building that trustworthy leadership, is the competence of their work and the character of their beliefs. So walk the talk, inspire people, motivate people, open conversations, not the agenda and biased conversations. No bias with anyone. We must always remember, when we are talking to people whom we don't like, we have some biases. So the self-awareness will stop you as a good leader to rethink about your biases and not let your biases impact the conversation that you are having with the people. And that will eventually help you to become more empowering and more enabling person at the workplace. And eventually that will help you to make an organization grow. As good teachers, you also have bigger roles to play. You have to be a catalytic agent at the workplace, at the class, at the institution. And that catalytic agent has to make sure that you create an environment that encourages not only your colleagues, not only your peers, but also the students to think innovatively, to think creatively. That not only makes you to answer every question, but creates an environment where students and people ask questions, and you are able to get answers from more people, rather than you becoming the sage on the stage knowing all the answers. So the good quality of a good leader, teacher in a class is not to answer all questions, but to have the ability to create more meaningful and purposeful questions. That creates a sense of inquisitiveness, that creates a sense of just going utsukta in the classroom, in the environment, and that deepens the critical thinking, creative thinking, and problem solving among the students. I think this all governance to leadership melts down to an individual. Unless we all, teachers, as leaders, think that the world is changing, the regulations are changing, the governance models are changing, and as a leader, if we do not change, align, and embrace this change, we will not be able to make Bharat what we are visualizing. We will not be able to make our institution what we are visualizing. We will not be able to make our programs what we are visualizing, and we will not be able to make a difference to the lives of the people who are expecting us to bring a change for them and make them the best performers in the coming days. So with that, I stop myself here, and once again, I wish you good luck for what you have done, this program, and compliments to all the people who have been eagerly part of this this 1 week initiative that you have organized. I wish there's a Vedic saying that is Krintova Yantu Vishwataharyam. Let the noble thoughts come from all sides, and let they govern me and enable me and inspire me to do a more purposeful work for myself and for the society. Once again, Jai Bharat, Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. You have created a very pious and enlightening environment here. Now, I would like to request all the participants that house is open for sharing your queries or some questions or doubts. The participants can share with us on the chat box, as well as can raise their hands so that the IT team can accordingly unmute them. I again declare that House is open for discussion. If there are any queries, please write in chat box, or you can raise your hands so that IT team can unmute you. Sir, actually, what I personally feel, and I think that the audience is also in the same aura. It was such an, yeah, there is. IT team, please unmute Dr. Aditi. IT team is requested to unmute Dr. Aditi. She is interested in a question. Dr. Aditi, unmute. Yes, sir. Yes, Dr. Aditi.
Good morning, sir. Thank you, ma'am, for giving this opportunity. So you mentioned about a shared vision in your talk. So, sir, what we see right now is that all the stakeholders within the higher education institutions have to have this shared vision, and it has to be rooted down to the student category also. So, sir, what is your thought on the other side of the party? I mean, what should students be contributing towards the shared vision, sir?
So you mean to say, can you restate your question?
So you talked about the shared vision that higher education institutions should have. So we have different stakeholders, right? The teaching faculty and the students. So how we can, imbibe those understandings to the students category so that we are able to achieve that shared vision, sir.
Now let's understand what does shared vision refer to. So if we look at shared vision is a clear and common picture of a desired future.
Right, sir.
Now, what is that desired future? That desired future, everyone will have their own perspectives, own thoughts about that desired future. So certain, when you talk about the students, their future is limited with their limited understanding of what future means. Someone would want to take a job, someone would want to join Google, someone would want to join army, someone would join somewhere. So for them, the vision of a desired state of future is very limited with the understanding. The role of teacher is through dialogues, through discussions, through bringing in new perspectives, enhance and broaden the way a student today thinks. And that can happen only when teachers have developed a mechanism of guided discussions with the students. For example, you are teaching any topic. For example, you are teaching a topic on, say, management. We are talking about Macklin's theory, or we are talking about the Maslow's theory. Now, today, Maslow's theory is restricted to the theory and its implication. But how many times we have a discussion with the students going on that what are the various dimensions of this Maslow's theory in day-to-day work environment that they see, in policies that they see, in procedures that the organizations adopt. Now, the point I'm trying to bring here is, if you want to take the shared vision, and I gave you a small example, but if you want to take a shared vision of an institution and link it to an individual's vision of his or her aspiration, and then create a shared vision of the students, you will have to customize certain discussions within these people. For example, in a campus, we want to make a sustainable campus. Now, how does the sustainability of a campus, a student is able to link to the sustainability of the world, sustainability of the environment, sustainability of the society, sustainability of anything that a student will have to do in his personal or professional life in future? So that all depends how today the academic leaders bring in those aspects in the discussions. You may have any topic, but how you as an academic leader want them to be connected to the student's mind, and student is able to forward connect it with some bigger topics. That all depends on how do you create, customize such discussions in the students with the objective that you have in mind.
Right. Thank you so much for your answer, sir.
Is there any other query? So there is a query in the chat box. The question is, do we need to bring massive change in our governance and leadership pattern to run NEP efficiently?
See, in my understanding, it's my personal view, new education policy is not a magic wand, that it will be a panacea for everything. But when we look at the new education policy and the various aspects that the new education policy has brought in, we see a pattern that we were following in last couple of decades versus a new pattern that emerges if we follow this. For example, we had a single brush approach to the students right from 10th plus 12th. Now, what they have done in the new education policy, which was very scientifically thought through, that if we break this 10 plus 2 to 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4, it has now brought a new discussion in the focus that now the students up to the first 5 years require a dedicated focus, because this is the formative stage of the child's mental development, which was earlier not happening. Now, so you will have a very specific regulated focus around those first 5 years, then the next 3 years, then the next 3 years, then the next 4 years. So which means they are trying to align the policy interventions with the mental development of the child, which is a very good step. Bringing in 3 language program, 1 mother tongue is a beautiful way of connecting, children, where in India we have 20% people in tribal, almost 60-70% in rural, and most of them getting highly influenced by their mother tongue, can leverage their mother tongue as a medium of education. This is a big tectonical shift that we are talking about. We are bringing in the Lokala, for example, at the class 6 level, where the students start appreciating the vocations and the skill education right from the early childhood, rather than we pushing education of skill and vocation when the children fail after a specific age of 14, 15, and then we push them into that, and then we have vocational education as the last resort. Now, you see many things that have been introduced in the new education policy are ingrained in the philosophy of transforming. So I think the purpose is very good. The only thing is it requires the rigor of execution. Unless it is executed well, nothing is going to change. And I have my own observations on that. If we all, means all of us who are involved in this education service, if we do not align ourselves with the new emerging changes that are happening, nothing is going to succeed.
Thank you, sir. We understand that you have to leave for a meeting also. And thanks for sparing time for today's session, sir. I would like to especially thank you for sharing the enlightening gist of your rich experience as a leader, motivator, administrator, and a policymaker. You have shared the vast spectrum of higher education spread over centuries with detailed statistical and research viewpoints, sir. And that too in context to national and international current issues and areas of utmost importance. You have highlighted the analysis of great education institutions and awakened the audience regarding the importance of objective of the education. And to understand that how holistic view, we need to revisit the practice of ancient Indian education ecosystem. It's our privilege, sir, that an esteemed member of implementation committee has himself has guided us today regarding the various aspects where the young leaders present today in audience can actually contribute and what are nation's expectations from us. You have inspired us with aspirational way forward and how each stakeholder at all level can impart the significant contribution in new Bharat. Sir, you have touched the heart of all the audience while sharing that a cohesive planning of large vision, mission with tangible goals at different intervals are the actual milestones in the achieving the larger purpose by connecting energies for positive and bigger aims. Sir, supporting the team at SVSU also in continuous arrangement of such activities, including this national workshop, is a live example of guidance, support, and mentorship we are getting here in SVSU also. Sir, now I would like to, with your permission, I would like to request Professor Rishi Palji for a vote of thanks for today's session.
Yes, sure.
Sir, thank you very much for sparing your time. I know very well how busy you are today. You have to go somewhere, you have to go for a flight, but even then you manage time and you are taking a session. This is really wonderful for the organizing team and specifically for the participant. Sir, you started with the evolutionary process of education development, and then what is role of academic institutions, and then how leadership by uh, knowing the self, knowing the potential, grooming it into the appropriate manner, and then working collaboratively, working in the team, which is at most important. And you specified that leadership and governance is not at top level only. It is permeating from the top to the bottom level, and everyone is in the role of leadership, whatever is the position. Sir, from the core of my heart, I express my thanks for taking this session. And yes, of course, definitely it is going to contribute in the development, whatever was the objective of this workshop, that will be achieved because of your contribution in the form of your experience and knowledge. And I can share with the participant that we are here in this university, in this academic institution, with an appropriate role model, as well as a reservoir of experience and knowledge with which we are grooming and developing this institution. Sir, thank you very much. My thanks to the organizing team, IT team, and all the participants for their patient listening. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Rishipalji, one thing before I conclude, like we have a bank account. In bank account, we keep savings. And all of us have a habit of checking our savings every time, how much money we have grown in that account as a saving. As an academic leader, we must also create a learning account. And we must also create a development account. In learning account, we must always see how much we have learned every day. What is the growth in the learning of that in that account? That's my personal learning. And in the development, I must see how much development I have contributed back. If my bank balance of money is increasing and there is no increase in learning account and development account, I think I have not served the purpose of a human being and a professional and an academic leader teacher in my life. My life has been meaningless for all that I have lived.
This is really wonderful, sir. And this is just of the complete session. And yes, it is going to contribute for the development of the participants. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for sharing Sutra of Life.
Thank you.
This is for the information of participants again, that next session is also going to be a wonderful session because we have invited wonderful, experienced voice chancellor, one of very good university, MIT University. So my request to all the participants, please join the session 5 to 7 minutes prior, as you have done in this session. So my request to all, some of the participants are waiting for starting the session. Please do not wait. join it minimum 5 to 4 minutes prior to that, so that whenever the resource person is coming, we should be ready to start the session. Thank you. We will meet again at 12. The next session will start at 12. Thank you very much, everyone.